Hey, it's Drybear. The V Rising 1.0 release is upon us, and I was fortunate enough to get early access to the new content. So today I'm going to go through the ultimate gear progression guide that you need to get your character stronger and stronger all the way through, and including Dracula the Immortal King, which is truly a doozy of a fight. Now I'll start with the new content for people who are veterans of V Rising. If you're looking for just the new zone and the new gear and the new gearing up, activities you'll have available, and then once we're done with that, and then we'll go directly into gear progression starting from the very level 1 early start of the game all the way up through Dracula. Now the gear progression loop for V Rising is rather straightforward. It just cycles through collecting materials, then using those materials to craft the best available gear that you have, and then taking that gear and defeating V Blood bosses to unlock new recipes, and then repeating that cycle at the beginning, because when you unlock new recipes, you unlock new materials, and the cycle repeats itself. And that's continuing in V Rising 1.0, however, there's a bunch of new things that you need to be aware of. Firstly, in the Ruins of Mortium, the new zone, there will be these impromptu timed events called Rift Incursions that will happen throughout this zone constantly. There's multiple tiers of these that give better and better rewards, but the basics of it is you will go to these areas while they're active, complete the crystals that are there, and then defeat the enemies, and then eventually defeat the final boss of it. And for that, you'll get a currency called a Stygian Shard, and then for the higher tier ones, you'll get greater Stygian Shards. And at least in the early access version, the South Merchant that exists in this new zone will sell you the first tier of these new Ancestral Weapons, and the North Merchant gives you the higher tier version of it. So if you're looking at the gear itself, the ones that go up to about 26 in level, the Ancestrals will be sold by the South Merchant, and then in order to get the purple level 30 and the legendary level 30 weapons, you will need to go to the North Merchant, though this might change after release. To track the Rift Incursions, you will need to craft an Eye of Mortium and place it down in your castle, and while this is active, as long as you have this here, you can just track the activity of these Rift Incursions, these realm rifts. In order to complete the incursion, you need to go and complete all of the crystals that spawn, and then go to the middle of the area and fight the boss, the shadow that appears for that. At least in my experience, these have all been 2 separate crystals. When you clear those out, you'll be able to go to the middle and fight the final boss, and then get all of your shards from that. And if the area is particularly large, you can go to the middle of the map area, and from the center crystal, it'll shoot out this black beam that goes out to the lesser crystals while they're active, so you can just follow that beam to the crystal, destroy it, and come back until all the crystals are destroyed and the Rift Incursion is over. Then simply take your shards to the Vampire Merchant. You'll be able to pick up these Ancestral Weapon shards, which function just like the previous version of these weapons. You have to take them to the Ancestral Forge and craft them into real weapons and upgrade them that way. And again, the Southern Merchant does give you the ancestral base versions of these. It's basically just going to be a replacement for the Ancestrals if you didn't have them prior to the 1.0 update, and these will be granted by the Southern Merchant. However, there's a big difference here in that these, just like before, these can be upgraded from level 20 to level 23 to level 26, and the effects and bonuses you get on these are randomized when you purchase them from the vendor or when they drop during one of the incursions. You can get varying levels of stats on them. They can affect different abilities and have different infusions and different bonuses. But the most important part is the higher level, the level 30 ancestral weapons. When you pick them up and they drop, or when you buy them from the merchant, they have a chance to turn not into a purple, but into a legendary. And this is what you're looking for. The stats are pretty close to the exact same. I think they just happen to be maxed out when you drop them. However, the ones that you get that are legendary will come with their own 2 unique abilities that both have stats on them, which is super useful and makes it very, very strong to deal with. I'm running with a lightning build right now. I'm using the soul shard that makes it so I proc chain lightning on hit, and I have these super fast cloud dancers that just attack super fast, especially after I dash, so I can trigger tons of chain lightnings, and I have tons of mobility, and I also have it so when I go out into stealth and come out, I can do a big burst damage, and I have tons of extra damage on the ultimate as well from my soul shard. Now, all ancestral weapons will be crafted and upgraded at the Ancestral Forge, forge. You'll want to come here and be able to put in the broken versions of these inside and have them crafted. And then the ones that can be upgraded will be upgraded here as well. So you'll put them in. However, it seems like the level 31s have not had any upgrade path at all, especially the legendaries. Once you have them, there's no way to upgrade them, but you can take the lower ones, especially if they're below level 26, and upgrade them that way so you can make them stronger and have them keep up with you. Next, you'll want to create the Altar of Stygian Awakening, which is going to give you a bunch of really cool passives. You'll take your shards to this altar and be able to use those shards to unlock special powers and passives for all the different element types that all have different kinds of bonuses like resistances and things like that, and you can specify your build that way. The first row is bought using the Stygian shards, and then the second row is bought using the greater Stygian shards to make things even stronger. So if your gear score between 80 and 84, depending on your difficulty, you'll want to be going into the new zone and doing these rift incursions, collecting the Stygian shards and working towards maxing out your Altar of Stygian Awakening, and then getting the best possible ancestral weapons that you can so that you can fight all the new bosses. Now with the 1.0 update, you're going to see a lot of the same bosses in the early game, though some of them have changed locations and some of them have been buffed or tweaked in some ways, but you'll be following this path, and we'll talk about the basic progression in just a moment. But once you have a good ancestral weapon or you're ready to progress, you want to find Simon and take him out so you start crafting whips if you're interested in using that weapon. It is a pretty fun single target damage weapon. And then you want to clear out as many of these bosses as you can, because once you do, after clearing Lord Styx, the Knight Champion, you'll be able to make onyx tears at the anvil, which will be useful for the weapons you're about to craft. And then you'll kill off these top 4 bosses to unlock the final armor set in the game, Dracula's armor. All 4 of these top tier endgame bosses have their own sigil that they will drop that has it's a necklace that is the same level as the best necklaces you can craft, but they have some really insane bonuses. They'll give you a unique ultimate while it's equipped as well. And on top of that, if you're on a PvP server, these do deteriorate over time. Their durability will slowly go down as long as you have them equipped, and you'll be able to use those for the time being. But if you're on a PvP server, there's going to be a lot of fighting back and forth, and you can even set it in the game settings to have only one version of the soul shard available, which means you have to fight each other over it to hold on to it to get all these cool effects. But on top of that, you're going to get 1 slot of Dracula's gear from each boss. So Towels of the Winged Horror will unlock the ability to craft Dracula's gloves. The Solaris fight, the Immaculate, is basically the same as what it was before. You will get Dracula's boots from this, and then if you clear off Adam the Firstborn, which is insanely hard on Brutal, you'll get the leggings from him, and then you'll put all of those together and be able to face off against Dracula, the Immortal King, which is a crazy fight, and once you complete that for the first time, you will get Dracula's chest guard, which will allow you to craft all of the level 9 armor gear, Dracula's gear, and it comes in different sets that have different bonuses. And that basically completes the gear progression for the new content. You'll just want to clear out the new bosses, make sure you're doing the rift incursions, get the shards, and then craft whatever set of the Dracula gear that you're looking for in order to max out your offensive power. Keep in mind, in order to enter into Dracula's castle, you will need to craft the Blood Key Amulet, which will allow you to enter and fight him in order to complete the loot. And if there's interest, I can do boss guides on these on the brutal difficulty, so if there's interest, drop that down below in the comments if you're looking for a little bit more detail on the bosses here. Now that that's done, let's cover the gear progression starting from the very beginning of the game. And one thing to know about V Rising is that you do not have an actual character level, you're just going off of your gear score. So if we take off all of our gear and drop it down in our inventory, you can see that our gear level drops dramatically. When we put it back on, it jumps back up to what it was before. And so you are just going through the loop that we talked about earlier of collecting materials, crafting gear, putting the gear on and using that gear to defeat bosses, and climbing up the chain. If you press K on PC, you'll be able to look at all the available bosses that you'll see here. And when you start at the very beginning of the game, you'll go through Act 1 and fight your way through all of these, and each one of these will unlock useful things like the tannery to unlock a new material that you can use to craft new gear, different storage options, and ways to just build up your castle so that you can make it more effective, bigger workshops, bigger areas, and ways to make your character stronger. So when you're first starting out, you want to basically find a location where you can place down a castle heart so you can start the beginnings of your base, because you're not going to have any gear score level, you're not going to have any strength available. We put on our fishing pole here and we're just kind of this newbie adventurer that's going out looking for places. So if you're looking for it, you'll find these little locations as you go around that look like this. These areas that show materials on the map are locations where you'll find enemies these. However, it's kind of jagged and blue like this. It's an area where you can place down a castle heart, which means you can build a base there. And you'll go through the process of placing things down and adding extra little bits here and creating new locations. And once you have this, you can upgrade these and make these stronger as well. If you press tab on PC, you'll be able to go to the basic crafting menu. In the very beginning, you'll be able to craft bone weapons and bone guard gear, and that will be the starting point for your character, depending on the settings for your server. So you'll be able to kind of craft these separately, and this will have your weapons. You'll start with basic weapons anyways, and then you'll finally be able to make a simple workbench, and here you can start upgrading these. So you'll be able to create from your crafting menu bone weapons, but then you can then unlock reinforced bone weapons, which will require you to create planks using a sawmill, and you'll use that upgraded gear to get the first hurdle clear, which is Keely the Frost Archer. You will need to get up the tannery because this will be your first big upgrade to the next tier, which is unlocking the ability to create leather. Your gear score will come from your single amulet or jewelry slot and your 4 gear slots, your chest, legs, boots, and gloves. But don't slack on upgrading your cloak. This one doesn't add to the gear score directly, but it does give you a bunch of stats and HP value, which is really nice, and also gives you resistance to some of the nasty things out there like garlic and holy and the sun. Then for each tier, you will hit a research wall in that you'll be able to clear out some of the V bloods that you have available here, and these will unlock new materials. You'll be able to go and craft new gear for your character that you can use to make yourself a little bit stronger, but then you'll hit a point where you're not quite strong enough yet, depending on your difficulty, to challenge the next level of the V Blood bosses that are available, and you're not really sure what to do next. And the biggest advice I have here is to lean on your research. So if you press B on PC to bring up your crafting here, you can craft research, and for each tier, the tier 1, like Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, you'll be able to see these research options, and you'll be able to go to these once they're placed down and unlock new recipes for new gear, even new options for the base itself, consumables, things like that. But that's where you're going to unlock a lot of your big research options for unlocking new materials. So what you'll do is, this is the tier 3, this will be the tier 2. If this is completely blacked out, your goal is to fill out this recipe list to unlock the next tier of weapons and armor for your character. And you do that using the knowledge scrolls or paper or schematics that you find either out in the world or that you craft. So when you're questing or fighting bosses, you'll randomly get these knowledge drops that are recipes for crafting options. And you'll find these out in the world. You'll just need to take it to the research object or base that you need to bring it to. It'll tell you on the item. See, this is a tier 2. It goes to the study. Some of these will need to go to the research desk, which is tier 1. And if it's tier 3, it'll say the Athenium on it as well. So you know that that's going to be the tier 3 option. But that's where you're going to start unlocking these different recipes. On top of that, you have these 3 materials. For tier 1, it's paper. For tier 2, it is scroll. And for tier 3, it is a schematic. And you'll be able to go to the research option at the top of the screen here. You can consume a certain amount of them to discover a random new recipe. So eventually you'll get to a point where you want to have a paper press and start creating paper to get through tier 1, get enough paper created. And once you have that, you can go over to the research desk and randomly select all of the researches that you have available in that to get all the recipes that you need so you can start tiering up, right? So if you didn't quite yet have sanguine weapons in tier 3, you would want to farm schematics over and over until you actually get one available, craft it, equip it, that gives your gear score up, and then you can start challenging these higher V Blood bosses. Once you defeat them, you'll start unlocking some new options for you that will allow you to then craft even more things, and then you'll start going through that same gameplay loop we talked about. So once you unlock the paper press, I highly recommend putting one in your base and having it going as often as possible. By the time you unlock the paper press, you should have a good amount of the sawdust that you've been using from crafting planks, and you can pick up the plant fiber by clearing anything outside your base and just put it in here in the input and constantly be creating as much paper as you can so that you can go over to the research desk and start unlocking new recipes. Once you finally max that out and you go into the tier 2, you'll be able to put down a study, do the same thing. Then you want to take all the paper you've created, make sure you get core Force Thread, create scrolls, use those scrolls to unlock research, and then you're just going to go through that same loop until you get to tier 3 for schematics and complete that to get all the recipes that you need. But even then, depending on what kind of server you're playing on, if you're playing on a PvP server, it may be very difficult to kill some of these bosses. You might get raided, or your base gets destroyed, or you lose progress in that way. Or if you're playing with super high difficulty, like brutal difficulty, with all the modifiers jacked up or moved all the way down that they possibly can, you're going to want to have some good strategies for taking on some of the more challenging V-Blood bosses that you'll need in order to progress. So let's talk about some tips and tricks that you can use to take on some of the V-Blood bosses well before you get the gear that you need. The ones that are challenging when they're red to you, you don't have quite the gear score that you need in order to take them on. There are some ways that you can soften the blow and make it easier for yourself so that you can still make progress. And the biggest one that I want you to focus on first is going to be consumables. These will absolutely, positively save the day for you. They can give you a ton of extra healing if you use them properly, and you can also build resistances that are very crucial for some of the fights that are insanely difficult. All of the holy fights I had so much trouble with on Brutal because they do so much ridiculous amounts of damage. So Christina, the Sun Priestess, was super hard without the holy resistance option on that as well. Raziel the Shepherd was also insanely difficult, and I spent a lot of time trying to get through the last boss here, Solaris the Immaculate. All of them are super tough, but that's because I wasn't making good use of having holy resistance flasks or holy resistance potions. I cannot tell you and stress enough how important high resistances are for the specific fights you're going against. If you're fighting in a town where there's going to be a bunch of garlic in the area, you want to have some high resistance to the garlic as well, or maybe even in the silver mines, you may want to have silver resistance potion as well. Make sure you're crafting the vermin salves, the blood rose brew, and the blood rose potion, as these will give you HP. And the important thing about these is that when you take damage in combat, you will lose the effect from it. So you want to make sure that you're finding a good spot. So if I just took damage here, I might want to pop down a wall and then pop the potion, and then let it kind of tick as I'm hiding from the boss to get your HP back up, and then you can come back out and start fighting. And you'll start to get unlocks of like more damage output from the witch potion or the potion of rage. All of these consumables make a massive difference in fighting these bosses. The next thing is to be sure of the element that you want to use and put together a good build that fits what you're looking for, that's backed up by strong jewels. So let's look at the spell book that you have available for your character, all the different passives that you can have unlocked and things that you can add to your build as well, and how that all synergizes together. They'll start the game with the basic blood magic tree, some of the basic here like Shadow Bolt and Bloodright, and you'll start unlocking those as you go along. When you fight these bosses here, you'll start getting spell points of a certain tier that allow you to then spend that point in your your spell book tree, so you can start unlocking more and more of these skills. And sometimes some of the abilities might fit the boss you're fighting better than others. So if you're looking for a dash, maybe having a dash that you'll use to create an extra enemy or something that can distract. For a lot of the fights, sometimes I would use the Ward of the Damned because it would summon a skeleton. So I'd use this as my counter skill so that I can actually summon adds that will redirect a charging enemy or boss, just to make sure that they don't charge towards me and hit me. Some of the blood magic abilities have high leech, so if you're up against a boss where you really can't dodge the damage that you're taking, there's a couple bosses in here where you're just going to take a bunch of chip damage constantly. One of them is Cyril the Cursed Smith. This guy summons AoE, like summons ghostly weapons all over the screen constantly, that makes it very difficult to avoid taking damage all the time. And so having leech abilities, either spell leech or your physical leech, can go a long way in making sure that you last the entire fight. On top of that, each of these abilities can be modified with a jewel that has a tier on it as well, and these jewels are randomized in their effects. So when you craft this or find a jewel out in the world, it will have random stats on it that can modify that ability to make it even stronger, and the higher tier jewel that you get, the more the effect is going to be very prominent. So that your main abilities, you want to make sure you have is the strongest jewel possible with the right combination of stats and bonuses that you can use for that. So once you have the ability way to unlock the jewel crafting table, you'll want to make sure that you're crafting the highest possible on these, and then make sure that the ones that you get have the random stats that benefit the build you're looking for. And this will actually happen as well before you have the ability to craft the jewels, is that you might get some good jewels that drop for abilities you aren't currently using, and it might actually be better for you to use that ability with the jewel equipped than the one you're used to using without a jewel in it, because the jewel difference, even on the lower level ones, can be absolutely massive. Things like adding leech to abilities to heal yourself, more shields to keep yourself alive, more bonus damage, or even some of the status effects that can make your build come together. You may even need to change element because you got so many cool jewels for something that was not on your radar before. Maybe you want to pick it up and switch over to illusion magic or over to chaos magic because you got some nice bonuses for those, or they fit the boss you're going against. The other thing that I don't see a lot of people maximizing as well is going to be your blood pool. So not only do you have the blood for the blood you sap from creatures and enemies that you'll be able to fight in the field, but also the stronger blood that you have in you specifies the type of kind of bonuses you get and how strong that bonus is. And I've seen people go against very difficult bosses while having blood quality of like 5% or lower. So the higher blood quality that you get from enemies, the higher the bonus will be. And if you max it out completely, you can get insanely strong bonuses from that. And there's a couple ways you can actually capture very strong blood pools. So if you find a blood pool or a blood quality that you really like, you can subdue that enemy, bring them back and put them in a prison cell, feed them fish so that they don't ever run out or die, and you can just kind of drink from them and reset your blood pool while keeping the same bonus active. You can also create blood potions and blood merlots of these specific types so you can hold on to them as well. I don't have any of the good ones on because I use them already for fighting bosses, but you can actually extract them and hold on to them so you can have these in a pinch to reset your blood and also reset the buff that you have so you can keep it to yourself. There aren't too many vampire powers that you can use in a pinch in a fight that are super useful. They're mostly just like open world. You can jump around with the toad form, or you can use the bat form to fly over obstacles, or you can use the spider form to avoid the sunlight, but for the most part you're not going to be using many of these. However, I have saved myself many times with the blood mend, which is your default way of healing yourself. So you can actually use the blood that you have available in your blood pool to consume that and heal yourself up. Now, just like your potion, when you consume one, if you take damage, you will stop doing this blood mend, and it does consume your blood pool to do it. So you want to make sure that you find a safe spot in the fight to switch over. Sometimes if I'm against a really hard boss, I might actually just pop a potion and then start blood mending around a corner, or when they're doing a locked animation to get myself healed back up. But that can really be the difference between succeeding and clearing a boss or failing. And that's progression in the new 1.0 update. This update has been super awesome for the game. It's been a lot of fun to play, and I hope this video was helpful for you. If you found value in today's video, leave a like down below, leave a comment for the algorithm to help this video get seen by more people, and don't forget to check out my other channels for other content and other stuff and other things.